Okay, so we are going to be beginning Siman Kuf Chav Ches, the halachas of Elul. Before you get to Tishrei, we have to start with Elul. So first, we all know the idea of Elul that we learn a lot in Chassidus. The idea of Elul is a little bit of a balance. It's a time that we're going to discuss in the halach of exactly what it is. But what ends up happening is a little bit of a balance. Because on one hand, it's a time for tshuva, but really the whole year is a time for tshuva. So it's a special time. But if it's a special time, then it's hard to do tshuva when it's such a special time that you have to do tshuva. Tshuva has to be sincere from yourself. So you'll learn about it in Chassidus, I'm sure, all about the idea of how you balance that Hashem is going to inspire us in the month of Elul, that we should want to do tshuva to some degree, but at the same time, it's not forced. So it's something that we're going to choose, and it's going to be sincere tshuva, right? If it's insincere tshuva, it kind of defeats the purpose. Okay, so let's begin. Siman Kuf Chav Ches. We're going to learn the halachas of Chodesh Elul. So number one, Sif Aleph. The 40 days that start from Rosh Chodesh Elul all the way until Yom Kippur, those are days that are Yimei Ratzin. Those are days that are special days, days of favor, where Hashem favors the Yidden. It's an opportune time. Now, why? Why is it any different than any other time? So the Kitzur explains, really the whole year, anytime a person does tshuva, Hashem receives and accepts the tshuva. There's no time that a person is, oh, now you can't do tshuva. You can always do tshuva, but but these days are choice days for tshuva, which means that they are better, more opportune, and also they're mizumanim, which means that they're prepared for tshuva. How are they prepared? Tshuva because because these days are days of rachamim, of mercy from Hashem, and yemei ratzin, that Hashem is close to us. Why? Why are these days different than any other time? Because on the first day of the month of Elul, Allah Moshe Har Sinai lekabel luchas shniyos. Moshe Rabbeinu went up Har Sinai in order to get the second luchas. Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu went up Shavuos. He came down 40 days later, and we know what happened with the Chet Egel. So what day was that? Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. So then he went up the next day. He went up the next day back up for the next 40 days, which means the rest of Tammuz, and then Of, which gets him to, and he came back down the day before Rosh Chodesh Elul, and then he went back up on Rosh Chodesh Elul for the last 40 days, and that's when he got the Luchos. So which were the real 40 days of Yemei Ratzin and Nachamim? The second 40 days, these 40 days. That's when he actually got and that's when Hashem said that Salachti Kitvarecha, and that he actually gave him the second Luchos, because it was as if the Aveda, we were back to the way we were before. So these 40 days are very special from them. And V'nishtah Sham Arbaim Yom. Moshe Rabbeinu was up there to get the second Luchos for 40 days. The V'yara B'Asara B'Tishrei, he came down on Yom Kippur. That was the completion of the forgiveness of the Yidden, which is why we celebrate basically Yom Kippur in the same way. I actually saw somewhere that there's another thing I once remember seeing, that Yom Kippur also has to do with the Yemei of Kapara because of Adam Erishin. I forgot exactly how it worked, but Adam Erishin he ate from the Chet Tzadas. That was right before it was right before Shabbos, right? It was right before Shabbos, and then. And so that was so Rosh Hashanah was Friday. That's the day he was born, and then he did the Aveda on that day. Then you had a Shabbos, and then I think you would have another Shabbos before Yom Kippur. So it ends up being that the 7 days it took for Hashem to forgive Adam Erishin, without including Shabbos and the two Shabbosim, ended up that on Yom Kippur it was a full, complete kapara. I remember seeing something like that. So the point is, but these 40 days in general are a special time for kapara. Oz, from then, from the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, these days were special, set aside for us special to do tshuva via Masiri b'Tishrei, the Yom Kippurim, as we'll see when we get to the halachas of Yom Kippur, that the 10th of Tishrei, the final day, when he actually got the second luchos, the completion of the kapara, that's going to be Yom Kippur. Now, this is not our minig, but it's in here anyways. Many people have a minig, these anois be'erev Rosh Chodesh Elul, that they fast on Rosh Chodesh Elul. Yeah, and why do they do that? They call it Velasei Seder Yom Kippur Katan. They call it the Seder, the order of Yom Kippur Katan. So Yom Kippur is the day that we actually do the real kapara and we get forgiven for everything. That's later. But Erev Rosh Chodesh, because you can't really fast on Rosh Chodesh. So the day before Rosh Chodesh, the day before you start doing this tshuva, you have what's called a small Yom Kippur, and they would fast in order to be able to start off in a good way, kadesh yechinu libam l'tshuva, so that they should prepare themselves that the next day when Elul starts, they should be able to do it properly. Let me just finish the last line. What happens if Rosh Chodesh is Shabbos, which almost this year? This year was Sunday, but imagine Rosh Chodesh was Shabbos, so therefore you shouldn't really fast on Friday either. We don't like fasting on Friday because then you go into Shabbos hungry. We did it this year, and I think 2-3 years ago also. So it does happen that some of the fasts fall out on Friday. But if you had a choice, so only on Saturday. So if you had a choice, we try not to schedule fast during then if it's an optional fast, and other ones are worked out that we don't really like to fast on Friday. So over here, what should you do? So maktimin liyom chamishi shelafanav, you should fast earlier, which is a unique case, which we'll talk about much later, because usually we push off fast. We don't like to pull fast forward, but here we do for a separate reason. Yeah. I would say because usually fasts are a negative thing, so you don't want it to come earlier. But over here, it's not really negative; it's really for tshuva. So therefore, that's why we do. Yeah. Wait, which one? Where it says yeah. So is that talking about during Elul? Yeah, during Elul specifically, yeah. So that's yeah, that's just mikol makom. Even though the rest of the year you could always do tshuva, but still these days are more special. Okay, so yeah. You do fast before why don't we? It's a good question. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think in general, from the times of the Alter Rebbe already, we really try not to fast so often, and the Rebbe definitely did not appreciate fasting. So we usually try to do tzedakah, which we'll see soon. There are other things that you can do besides fasting. Fasting is a particular derech in preparation. You don't have to fast. There's other things you can do also. So we'll see in the next paragraph. We'll talk about that. Okay, next. So most of us are familiar with some of the Rosh Tevis for the month of Elul. Yeah. So there's actually a fifth one, but we're not going to talk about. So there's five. There's four of them that we're going to talk about. There's actually a fifth one, but we'll just talk about these four. So and this it comes from some of them come from the Arizal. So continues the Kitzur, and he says like this. That Harizal Kasaf, the Arizal writes that we have one pasuk, the first pasuk out of four, that va'asher lo yitzada. This is talking about someone who, God forbid, kills someone by accident. So it was not planned. So va'asher lo yitzada means that he didn't trap him. It wasn't on purpose. He didn't. There's an ambush him. Yeah, it was just velikim ineliyadai. It just it happened. Hashem made it happen. It happened like by mistake. That something happened, not positive. V'samti lacha, the pasuk continues and says that I'm going to prepare for you that you should have are miklat to run to. Okay, so from this pasuk we take the words inay liyadei v'samti lach or lacha, that if something happens to you by mistake, so the first letters are inay liyadei v'samti lach, spell out Rosh Tevis Elul. Now, why do we learn it out from this pasuk? There has to be a connection. So Leimar, we learn two things from this pasuk. Yeah, number one, ki chodesh zehu eis ratzain lekabel tshuva. Al hachatoim she'asa b'chol hashana. Number one, we have the word v'samti l'cha. V'samti l'cha means that Hashem says, "I will prepare for you." That was talking about when someone, God forbid, killed someone by mistake. But it means that Hashem prepares a place for people that need to do tshuva. You need to do tshuva, just like there you had Ari Miklat, so too you'll have a time today that, God forbid, no one should be in that situation, but you will have a space that you can do tshuva and return in the same way. So that's number one. And number two, v'gam remez, there's another hint that comes from this pasuk also, because this mistake that happened, this murder that happened, if you will, it was an accident. Right? And what's the worst thing that you can go to, someone when you try to get them to correct a mistake? And they have every excuse in the book. Why are they coming up with excuses? Because it's hard to admit that you did something wrong. But if you come up with an excuse, then you don't have to do anything. It wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything. So here you have a case where, God forbid, someone lost their life, but it was all because of a mistake. So a person might say, okay, not in that case. A person might say in any other mistake, what should I do? It was a mistake. By mistake, I eat something I wasn't supposed to eat. So I should do tshuva on it. I didn't know. Someone fed me something that was supposed to be kosher, and I found out later that something. It's not my fault. So it's very easy to not do tshuva, because what am I doing tshuva on? I didn't do anything wrong. And even if you do tshuva, sometimes when you have kids, so a parent tells them when they're hitting their sibling, so, wait, say sorry, right? Okay, sorry. That's not that's not what's supposed to happen. The kid is supposed to realize on their own that they did something wrong. But imagine the kid has every excuse. Well, he hit me first, and then so then they don't apologize. Even when they say sorry, they're not really apologizing. So you want to do tshuva, you first have to know you did something wrong. If everything that happened was a mistake and you blame it on everything else, then you never apologize. You can never really do tshuva. So a person might say, why am I doing tshuva for a mistake? So comes over here the Kitzur, the Arizal, based on this pasuk, and the Remes comes out like this: that even when we do things by mistake, and sometimes it's a legitimate mistake, it wasn't intentional, still we should do tshuva for that as well. I saw something happen recently. I was in someone's house, and what happened was a kid took something from their sibling that they didn't know was theirs, a toy, and they were playing with it. And the younger sibling was very tired, and they got very bothered. They were crying. It was a whole situation. So the parents were trying to get the older child to apologize for what he did, and he says, "I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't know this was his. Why am I apologizing?" So the parents are trying to say, well, there's two things. You're right. It was a mistake. You didn't do anything wrong. You took a toy and you played with it. Did you know that your little sibling is tired and hungry and was going to be upset that you used it? You didn't do anything wrong. But the fact is something wrong happened. So if you apologize, that's a way to make it better. So the point is, again, this story was not relevant to us necessarily, but the idea is the same thing. A person could say, I did a mistake. Why should I do tshuva? I did a mistake. It's true. We did do sometimes mistakes. It's not on purpose. But still, something happened that wasn't supposed to happen. And therefore, we could return to Hashem for that as well. Now, the Alter Rebbe writes also, by the way, in the Sikha, that this idea of Inu liyadi v'samti l'cha comes from the idea of Arei Mikla. So therefore, the Rebbe says that this is actually a reference to Torah. Because we know that it says that Divrei Torah kilted. The words of Torah is a refuge for a person also. So even though over here you'll see it's not necessarily referencing Torah, but the Rebbe says that Elul is also a time to involve yourself, to throw yourself into words of Torah, which will also protect you from all the Avedas, the Chas v'Shalom a person may have fell throughout the year. Okay, so number one, we have the first pasuk. The first pasuk was Inu liyadi v'samti l'cha. Fine. Next pasuk, Oid Amru Darshei Shumais. We also have other psukim that those who translate the Shumais, the secrets, they come up with three other psukim. Number one, and we'll explain each one. Number one, Umol Hashem Alekecha Es Levavcha Ve'es Levav Zarecha. That Hashem will circumcise the heart, of you and of your children. What does it mean to circumcise the heart? It means to peel away layers that are covering over our heart. So you can't connect to Hashem because you have things in the way, shmutz. So Hashem, it's talking about when Mashiach comes, that Hashem will peel away those covers and allow us to reconnect as well. But here you have the words, Es Levavcha, your heart, the Es Levav, and the hearts of your offsprings. These are also Rosh Tevis Elul. Okay, so now we have two. Number three, the famous one, Ani L'Deidi V'Deidi Li. So these are also Rosh Tevis Elul. These are also the first letters, are Ani L'Deidi V'Deidi Li, spell out Elul. By the way, the end words, what's the Safei Tevis? There's also another thing called Safei Tevis, the safe of the words. So what's the safe of these words? Yud, 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 which represents 40, the 40 days of Elul and the first 10 days till you get to Yom Kippur. So it's a more special time for tshuva as well. I saw that somewhere. I forgot where. Okay, and then we have the fourth pasuk. What's the fourth pasuk? That this comes from the Megillah, where it says, Ish l'reyehu matanis lev yedim. We'll see in a second. So here you have that, because again, it's Rosh Tevis Elul, first of all, but here also you have the idea that it could be some nekuda that has to do with Elul. So now, what do these three psukim have to do with Elul? The first pasuk we explained that number one, Hashem always is prepared to take your tshuva, and number two, you should even do tshuva on mistakes. What about the next three psukim? So he explains, he says that the remez l'shleisha dvarim, these are signifying three things. Number one, he says that number one, you have Shehem Tshuva. Number one, you have the idea of Tshuva, which we'll also say is Torah, and we'll see soon how. And then Tefillah and Tzedakah. These are the three things. A person needs to become more, to be more active in these three areas during the month of El. Now, how do the psukim translate to these things? He explains, Omal Hashem, the first pasuk, the first pasuk of these batch that we mentioned, which is that Hashem will peel away the covers of your heart and allow you to connect to Hashem. Remiz l'tshuva, because what's tshuva? Tshuva is, what does tshuva mean? To return. What does return mean? That you got separated, and now you want to become closer. So whenever you're in a relationship with someone, if God forbid you get your roommate upset at you, so if you have to reconnect and fix up the mistake, so that's a process that we call tshuva, that you somehow fix the damage, you peel away the layers that separated you, and you're able to reconnect. So too, throughout the year, unfortunately, people fall in things, so we get separated, if you will, from Hashem. And during the month of Elul, we have this reconnect where we're able to reconnect to Hashem. That's called tshuva. So that's called the Mal Hashem. Hashem will peel away the things that were holding us back the rest of the year from returning and put us in a better position to return to Hashem during this month. The next pasuk we brought was Ani L'Doidi, that this is from Shir Hashirim, where it says that I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me. Right? It's a way of saying that we have a two-way relationship. Now, this is Remes the Tefillah davening. Why? He uses an interesting expression. He says, Rinas Doidim. Rinas Doidim means the song of people who love each other. It's like a communication. So I'll give you an example. That let's say your parents are going to want to hear how your first day or your first week was. Yeah, tomorrow you're going to get your phones, maybe you'll call home, and your parents are going to say, how's the roommate, how's your friends, how's the food, how's this, how that. So some of those questions are important. They really want to know how things are. Some of them are not as important. For example, what you have for lunch today. They don't really care what you had for lunch today, as long as they know you ate. They don't really care if it was tuna or egg salad. But why are they asking? Because communication is part of a relationship. Every part of what you did and what you do is how they connect with you. So they want to know, did you have eggs or tuna? It doesn't really matter, but it matters because this is a way of communicating and becoming closer to another person. So the same thing with Hashem. And this we could bring about another time. But davening is not just reading words, and davening is not just requesting what you want and whatever it is. What is davening? Davening is supposed to be a communication with Hashem. And what? Well, it is Hashem. That's right. You don't hear the answer in a clear way, which is why we have to learn Chassidus. That opens us up to the reality of Hashem in our life, and that's the lifelong avodah. But the truth is, that's what tefillah from our side has to be. Tefillah has to be that we're not just coming with a laundry list of what we need. We're communicating with Hashem. We're having a connection. Doesn't matter if you're asking for Birchas Hashanim, that in Shemoneh Esrei, that the crop should be good. I'm not a farmer. Okay, the Mefarshim explain it might mean the Esrei for Sukkot. But the idea is it's not about what you're asking. It's about that we're communicating with Hashem. Okay, so that's the last. And then the last one is, we said, Ish L'Reyehu Matanas Le'Vedim, which comes from the Megillah. And there, obviously, Ish L'Reyehu, everyone to his fellow, Matanas Le'Vedim, and also to give gifts to poor people, which is obviously Remes L'Tzdaka. So these are areas that we need to increase in this year. Number one, he says tshuva, but it's really Torah and tshuva. Like we said, the Rebbe says that that pasuk of Ari Miklat has two nekudas. Number one, it has tshuva. Number one, it has Torah. What did I say? No, number one is Torah, because Torah we have from Inu Liyadi V'Samti L'cha, and the Rebbe tells us that that's referencing Ari Miklat. So Torah. Number two, we had tshuva. Number three, we had tefillah, and number four, we had tzedakah. These are four areas where during this month we should prepare. Okay, thanks all for joining today's class.